Hello, Puget Sound community. This is Jake Nelko from Career and Employment Services. Today, as a somewhat different part of our Ask a Logger series, we're joined by Tom Perry, class of '98, who is a professional career coach in Seattle. Tom has spent much of his career in positions related to hiring in the tech industry, and at the moment he works with a variety of clients, including new graduates navigating life after college. Tom has joined us today to share his perspective on the current job market and discuss some tips for navigating some of these unexpected changes. So thanks so much for joining us, Tom.
Yeah, Jake, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thank you all for joining us as well. The first 15 or so minutes of our call will be dedicated to some planned questions with Tom. And then after that, we'll open it up to some specific questions from those who've joined us today. So let's get started, Tom, with just a little bit about you. Why don't you tell us about the work you do now and how you got into it?
Yeah, so I have been a career coach for just over 4.5 years. As Jake, as you said, I'm based here in Seattle. It's sort of been a weird path for me professionally. This is not something that I had planned to do or was part of my career journey even 5-7 years ago. I was someone who started in technology after graduating from Puget Sound and planned on being in the sector for a while. And I had experiences throughout my career that I thought were very interesting, and decided to go out on my own just over 4.5 years ago to try to help people navigate their career. I saw this as being something that was a gap across my industry and technology. And as I was talking to more people and working with other folks across the United States, I saw that this was a gap in other industries as well. And so I decided to go out on my own and to launch my own business. It's been a really wonderful experience. You can think of it just like any life experience, where it is something that is exciting and scary and wonderful and everything you can imagine. And especially now, it's this that we're going through right now. It's just another experience that I know is going to lead to great things. But I'm really happy to be here, and thanks again for having me. Jake, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. Thanks for giving us your time too,
Yeah.
Tom. You've been really helpful, especially since I remember meeting at AskNet a few years ago. And I know we think of you often when we think of people that could add some perspective in terms of job markets and navigating job searches. So it's been very helpful to have you involved since then. So getting into what we want to talk about today, how would you summarize what you're seeing in this current market that's been greatly affected by COVID-19?
It's weird, that's really the one word I will use to describe this experience and what I'm seeing across the marketplace. On the positive side, I would say a couple things. First of all, there is a real sense of community that I'm seeing and willingness to help. And so I'm definitely experiencing a vibe of we're all in this together. We are going to get through this. This is something that is temporary. And people are wanting to help others who might be really experiencing a challenging time. So I've been very inspired by that. I have seen people really go out of their way in ways I haven't really seen in the past, that I think is just really wonderful across industries and across different positions and levels. There's just a really wonderful sense of community. I also think there's some really encouraging ways of doing business that's evolving from this. For example, the remote nature of a lot of jobs now, I think, will continue, which is very exciting for folks who may not want to move to a particular city or who don't do well in office environments. I think that's very exciting that we will probably see more remote opportunities, availability to work from home, whatever. So that's really great. And then the third exciting thing I'm seeing is there is obviously some slowdown, but there also are continuing to have opportunities across companies and segments as well. So there isn't this grinding halt across every sector that I'm seeing. There are internship programs that are still continuing. There are entry-level roles that are still continuing. There are mid-level roles that are still continuing as well. So I'm not seeing desperation or complete hiring freezes across organizations. So that's the good stuff I'm seeing. On the negative side, what I'm seeing is some sectors are more affected by this, as you can imagine. So there is some question around those industries and how that's going to play out, which I don't think we quite know the answers to that quite yet. There also is a lot of nervousness, I would say, from candidates and from people who are looking for roles around how to talk about this and how to sort of approach this, and how long is this going to be? There's definitely a vibe of uncertainty that I think is worth noting as well. That is more maybe on the negative side. And I think the third thing is just how long is this going to last? Are we going to be in this situation for a significant period of time? It's just that sort of unknown, I think, can also lead to some negativity as well. So again, real mixed bag, lots of real positive things. There are some scary things as well that I'm seeing in the marketplace here in Seattle and across the US.
And Tom, a somewhat unplanned question as you were talking, I was thinking about how this situation compares to what you experienced when we went through the Great Recession in 2008. I'm sure it's something you've been thinking about a lot. I know you were in a different type of work at that time, but based on just your experience, what are some of the differences and similarities that you see?
So on the similarities, I would say that there is a sense of uncertainty. I think that is present now, obviously, and it was during that Great Recession time. The depth of uncertainty is a little deeper now. The unknown ness that we're experiencing now, I think, is more apparent than I experienced during the Great Recession. I definitely have seen a contraction of people's spending and willingness to do stuff that they might have done in the past now and then. That's very consistent as well. And I would say the hiring and the sort of approach to new positions, that's been different to me. So again, I thought in 2008 and 2009, it was much broader hiring and maybe hiring freezes was sort of across the board in 2008 and 2009. Now it's much more industry specific. So again, I think that there are some segments, hospitality, tourism, those kinds of things are definitely really impacted. But then there are others that really aren't, and so that has been different. The important lessons I think that I'm seeing now that also were very important during the Great Recession from a candidate perspective is to really be clear and concise and confident with your value and how you're approaching potential opportunities. I also think that it's really important to have a plan now, as it was back in 2008 and 2009, around potential opportunities. And then the other consistent thing I would say is from a candidate perspective is this sort of like going easy on yourself almost. Like it's going to be hard. It's not going to be an easy thing to go through, and that's okay. And that's the other thing I'm seeing now that I also saw back in that time period as well from a candidate perspective.
Thank you. Something I'll mention before I get to my next question is for those in attendance, if you have questions, you're welcome to hold those and ask them until after these few, or you're welcome to type them into the chat and then we can just queue them up for after we get through these next few. So Tom, since your expertise is focused in technology, or I should say you're most familiar with that market, what are you seeing specifically in the technology field?
So a couple things. First of all, there is a company by company impact that I think people who are looking for roles, whether it be new roles or wanting to make moves in a company, that the candidate is going to need to navigate. So that's not really known externally, and so that's a little bit tough to navigate. But I think there is I think folks are going to need to be aware that in some cases there are lower hiring stuff going on. There might be some hiring freezes across organizations, and in other companies and locations that might not be the case. And so that might be just something to be aware of, that I am seeing in the tech sector specifically, that is just going to need to have some awareness that you might have some companies that are like, nope, we're on a hiring freeze across the board. You might have some companies that are like, well, this group or this product is not hiring, but this other group is, or we're totally hiring and things are still moving full steam ahead. The second thing I'm noticing in the tech sector is just a real willingness to help. So this is sort of what I talked about earlier. I do think that people are wanting to do what they can to help folks navigate this experience. So that could be people who are part of the Puget Sound community. It could be friends or contacts of other people who you might know within that network. And it goes beyond just the direct connections. I am seeing a willingness to help in technology sector, specifically for those second and third and even more distant connections as well, which I think is really exciting. And then I think the third thing around the technology sector in particular is there is a sense of optimism. I would say that is also very exciting. I again don't see a lot of doom and gloom in technology. There is this we're going to get back to normal. We might be slowing down now, but we don't expect this to last forever. So that's really exciting to me as well, that there is a sense of hope and and not this sort of doom and gloom.
Great. Yeah, it's pretty consistent with what I've been seeing too, and even just seeing some of my friends whose employers have been affected. They seem to be in the same sector, but they're being affected differently just because of what the company does and how they're handling things. So that's helpful to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into a little bit of advice for my last two questions.
Yep.
So with a lot of people getting discouraged by this market, what is one thing that someone can do today to help their job search?
So the one thing I would recommend is to spend an hour or two. It's not a lot of time, but spend some time really figuring out a plan. And I think what I mean by that, Jake, is a couple of things in that plan. One is to really get a sense of your community. So who are the people that you can lean on that are going to help you in this journey? You know, I do think that, as I said, there are tons of folks, connected or not connected, who want to help and will be there to help. And I think it's going to be really important for folks in that plan to identify your community. Like, who are those folks that are going to help you in these next, whatever amount of months. So I would really think broadly in that list. Think of, all the connections you have within the university, classroom and non-classroom activities, Greek system, sports, everything, I think is part of that list. And to really have a robust list of people who are going to be able to help you, and know that that's going to evolve and probably get bigger, which is exciting. But I think just seeing that on paper is going to be a really important piece of that plan. The second part of that plan, I think, is to identify the stuff that you know that you're good at that might be related to a particular role, or might not be. It's just stuff that you enjoy. So, for example, when I was in the university, I was part of the newspaper, part of the news organization. I was part of the campus orientation group. I was a Passages and Preludes leader. I was part of the Greek system. And so I took those experiences and tried to pull out stuff that I really enjoyed doing and I knew that I was good at. So for me, that was stuff like talking to people, solving problems, representing kind of a greater organization, being part of a group or a community. Like, I knew I wanted to be part of a team. I knew I could ask, interesting questions based on my newspaper work. So stuff like that, I think, was really important. Just, again, to get out on paper, to see that in writing, I think is very important. And it's not related to any specific job or company or whatever. It just really gets those strengths down on paper, so you have a good sense of where you could possibly plug in. And then the third and final piece of that plan, I think, is to start to really identify what kinds of things you could be doing if a job is what's next for you. So that, to me, comes from you just sort of brainstorming and thinking about what positions that you might be interested in. It also could be a lot of research where you are going through job listings or looking at companies that you find inspiring and going onto their career site and organically figuring out what sort of roles are there, what sort of language they're using. One of the things that I did was I was just so narrow in my search, and I was discouraged in a lot of ways, because I was like, wow, there's like 2 things that I think I could be doing after graduating, and I wish I would have spent some more time just researching and and looking at what the availabilities could be based on those strengths and the community that I know. I think there's a lot of value in just spending a couple of hours really on paper, getting a sense of who do you know, what do you know you're really good at, related to work or not. And then, what could be some possible options for you, knowing that, again, that could also expand and grow and become different and new as well.
Great. And my last question, I think you've probably covered a decent bit of this, but if there's any other additional advice you'd have, maybe some practical things, the kind of thing you can do today to for those who are in that entry-level job search right now.
Yeah, I do think that so first of all, the community, as I said, is going to be very important. I do think eventually thinking about how you're asking for help could be really useful and could be very helpful. And I can certainly help students who might not be sure where to start with that, but I do think the message and exactly how you're needing help and what sort of relationship you want with that community is going to be important. So I think thinking about that ask and how you're asking for help is going to be really important. And then the second sort of tactical thing I think could be useful is I do think there's some really awesome things that folks can do with like their LinkedIn profiles and some of the resume work as well. I know Jake and the entire team across CES has a lot of resources around resume work. In particular, Jake, I saw a post recently about some of the cool things that folks can do to differentiate themselves. I think that's important. And then I know there's a lot of resources out there around LinkedIn. There's been some alumni who have come and talked to students around that in particular. Those are some tactical things that I think can also help people feel good about the momentum and also know that's some tweaks that can be made over time. It doesn't need to be static. And that can just help people feel good about doing something during this, possible challenging time.
That's great. And the specific ask is a piece of advice that we got from Paul Morris in his interview a couple weeks ago as well. It seems very important if you're reaching out to someone. Would you be willing to chat with me on the phone for 20 minutes, asking for something specific so the person knows exactly what they're signing up for, or so they know exactly how they can help you? I found that that's really helpful.
Absolutely.
So those are all the questions that I had, and we've got a few. We've got a couple coming in from those in attendance. One you may have touched on already. Betsy was asking, when you say people should have a plan about potential opportunities, what does that look like? Is that a complicated thing or a simple thing?
Yeah. So thanks for that question, Betsy. I think it is more simple. First of all. I'm a fan of starting messy. I do think there's a lot of value in that. So in my head, I'm seeing like, a mind map, or it could just be a brainstorm. I think the important thing here, couple things. First of all, is just to get this out of your head and onto paper. I think there's a lot of value in that. I'm personally a fan of writing stuff out. There's something cathartic in that experience that I find really valuable, and getting that down on paper at sort of a macro level, and then know that it can become more specific. It can lead into some real targeted groups of people who you might want to work with or network with. It could lead to some real specific strengths that you want to make sure you try to talk about and leverage in a potential role. And then it could lead into some real specific types of roles or companies or internships that you're interested in. And then from there, that probably will lead to a more detailed plan of like execution and sort of what sort of steps you're going to be taking. But I think the thing that I see, and this was part of my journey as well, is that people go very tactical. They sort of get to that second stage first, where they update their resume, or they try to figure out the 2 people they're going to talk to, and they try to have their perfect level of strengths and their perfect job. And I think it's really important now more than ever to really take more of a macro view. Try not in your head to have this be an exercise of specifics. I think there's a lot of value in spending a couple hours just getting stuff out of your head.
That's
Tom,
great.
this is Betsy. I just wanted to be a human being and not just a static photo thing. I was running around, that's what we all do.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you simplifying that, because plan to a lot of people is just the idea is terrifying.
Yeah.
It's just starting, man. And I love what you're saying about beginning with the community, because in a way it's like the model of infection. Like, you talk to one person, they give you 2 ideas. You talk to the 2 people, they give you 2 more ideas. It is actually logarithmic.
Yes.
And in terms of how things that you never thought about.
Yes.
And the other thing I just want to mention is that, not everybody has a community that they feel like is connected or could help them with them. But we are collecting pretty big lists now of alums who are just saying, I get it. This is a tough time and I'm willing to talk to you and help. So I just want to encourage, anybody listening to the recording, anybody on today, just to say, yeah, there are loggers who, just because they're connected to you through that, really do care.
Yes, I totally agree. And I'm really seeing that willingness to help. And I think it just starts with, 1 or 2. If your list are 1 or 2, that's great, and start there. And like you said, Betsy, it just grows.
And that's encouraging. That alone helps.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go back to my static picture.
Let's see. And to follow up on that, if anyone is interested in getting connected with one of those alums or strategizing connecting with alums, you can start by contacting me. My email is jnelko@pugetsound.edu, and then we can talk about some practical steps to get you connected. Cool. So another question we've got from a student in the audience. First of all, thanks for your willingness to speak, Tom. And then he says, you've mentioned some industries seem to have an uptick in hiring while others have been reducing new hires. Do you have a sense of which specific industries are most prominently increasing or decreasing hiring right
now? Yes and no. And I think, again, it's going to be, I don't know if it's challenging, but it's just going to be part of the experience, I think, to navigate that. So again, on a whole, I do think that industries that are more office computer based, overall, I would say are less affected and are as normal as possible right now. So for me, that's a lot of the technology sector, as I said. There are other segments that have those components that I think are not as affected. So for example, healthcare overall as an industry is not as impacted. There are some segments that I've seen that are some of the actual healthcare elements that are impacted, but other parts of the business are not as impacted. And then there are industries that, again, we all sort of know are harder hit than others. So like I said, hospitality, travel, those kinds of segments. So I think it is going to require some investigation And I think you can do this on your own, again, not with a lot of time, but just through some organic searches or some Google or Bing searches around the particular industry. And this is another area where I think your community, whether small or large, can help you to navigate that as well, to get a little bit of a better sense. I would keep trying though. So if there are areas that you think might be really impacted, I still think it's worth investigating. Don't not go out there and investigate, or don't not look for roles just because you think they might be really impacted. I think it's still worth seeing what's available. But it is sporadic, and it's also sporadic in location too. So Seattle, where I am, there's not as big of an impact here regionally, and in the Bay Area, there's not as big of an impact regionally as there could be in other areas that are more reliant on tourism or travel, for example. So there's also that to think about.
Great. Yeah, looks like we might have a question. Yeah, go ahead, Colin.
Yeah. Hey guys. Thanks again for your time. Taking time, valuable information. I guess my question is around like the interview process. If you guys think that either it's changing, and how it's changing, or just general, I guess, interview advice.
Yeah, Colin, thanks for that question. I do see it evolving, and I say evolving because I do wonder if this is going to stay permanent, and this becomes sort of the way of the future. So I think physically the interview definitely is changing, and so this kind of interaction of video is, I think, definitely going to be the norm moving forward. I think so. That's one thing I know is changing for sure. I think the meat and the heart of the interview process, however, and the stuff that people are asking is not changing. So that to me is very encouraging. They're still looking for you and your personality and how you're going to add to the culture and some of the stuff that you're good at and the interests that you have in the company and the experiences that you have overall. That is not changing. People are still very curious about that at all parts of the interview process. Folks are also very interested in results and some of the stuff you've done. Again, whether it be part of academic work or non-academic work, there's still a very interest in those sort of results that I see, especially in technology. That seems to be a big theme that's continuing. And then there's also, sort of, how do you think, and let's try to solve problems, and how would you deal with this sort of thing? Sort of future looking, I think, is also still very consistent and quite a type of question that I still see across a lot of interviews as well, that I think is exciting. Like they're still interested in sort of how you'd come in and get stuff done. The only couple weird things I'd say, Colin, one is I do think because of the video newness and the fact I do think this is going to continue, I do think there could be some practice that people do to become more comfortable in this sort of environment. So for you as someone who is interviewing, I do think you might spend some time just making sure that you're good with this and you're looking good and you're dressed appropriately and all that jazz. I think that is now more important than ever. And you are being aware of eye contact and maybe not looking down you know, if you have a webcam like I do, like some of that stuff is just sort of weird. The other thing I'd mention too, Colin, is that on the other side, the people who you're interviewing with, this is also potentially new to them. And so it could be weird for you as a candidate to be talking to somebody who isn't as familiar or comfortable with this too. So that could also be part of the experience to be aware of, that some people are good at this, you know, who are interviewing you, and other people are gonna be sort of awkward potentially, or they might be looking down a lot, or they might be typing, which could throw you for a loop. So I do think it's worth thinking about that side as well. But overall, I would say the questions and the stuff that people are trying to get out of an interview is the same. The modality is just different and potentially weird.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Does that help?
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you.
All right. And if anyone else has a question, you're welcome to chime in, or you're welcome to type it into the chat, and we can have Tom field them. While we're waiting for additional questions, Tom, I know you've shared some things about just kind of taking care of yourself during this job search. So what are a couple of the tips that you have for people who are just stressed out by a really stressful and uncertain, you know, these uncertain times, as they're called?
They certainly are. Well, so little disclaimer, Jake, and you know this about me. I've recently, over the last couple of years, really gotten into meditation and trying to be more mindful and attempting to be a little bit more woo-woo in my approach, which is definitely not my you know, traditional way of doing things. I definitely have a more of a type A personality. But the shift for me into more of a mindful, meditative strategy has definitely helped. So for me, there's a couple things that I would mention here. First of all, I think it's just really important for you to acknowledge in your head that this is just a really weird time, you know, and this is not normal, and this is hard, and this is weird, and this is challenging. I think just acknowledging that overall is really, really important. I remember when I first started to see impact for me and my business back in early March, when all this stuff started to happen, you know, I was really scared and freaking out, and because, you know, my business is very service based, and even though we can do a lot of this sort of stuff online, you know, I love talking to people and presenting stuff and talking individually with individuals, and so I was really worried, and I called my community. I called my parents, you know, which still is a big part of my world. And one of the things my mom told me as I was crying to her about this was that, you know, Tom, everybody's going through this. This is something we're all experiencing, and this is not you. And just hearing that was reassuring, and it sort of just took the pressure off. And so I'd encourage you to just to think about that, is that we are all experiencing this weirdness together, and it's not normal, and it's hard, and that's the state of what we're in right now. The second thing I think is to be very aware and vocal if you need help. You know, if there are situations where you do feel overwhelmed or are more scared than you normally are, that there are resources out there to help, whether it be with the university or your local community or people like me to also help, that there are people out there. So don't be silent in your potential struggle. And you know yourself best. So if there is a time where you do need to talk to somebody like I needed to, that's also okay. And then the third thing I would be thinking about is there are a lot of, there's a lot of really great resources out there that I think can help, so if you don't want to talk, if you do want to, do this on your own or looking for some little best practices, like I said, I have found meditation to work really well. I use the Insight Timer app on my iPhone as a great resource for that sort of stuff. There's another great one called 10% Happier. They have a live 20-minute meditation every day at noon Pacific that has been very helpful for me. There's lots of books and podcasts and music and all that kind of stuff that just helps people get through this time. So there's other resources out there too that can help to take your mind off this as well. So those are some of my best practices, just to take care of yourself during all of this weird time.
Yeah, I'm glad that you've been sharing some of those things through your network, because it doesn't seem like that practical how do I find a job kind of thing, but we've got to be in a good mindset. We've got to be positive and confident when we're taking those practical steps. And sometimes it's about, it's that Maslow's hierarchy of needs in terms of, from the psychological standpoint of just being in a good mindset. For me, it's been watching ESPN's The Last Dance, the Bulls documentary.
Yep, great, huh?
Yeah, it's and without sports, it's really saved me psychologically over the last 5 weeks. But it is, I laugh, but it is just finding those little things too, whether it's meditation or going for a walk or watching something that just helps you to relax a little bit.
Yeah, I think the important thing for me is to, and again, this is not something I traditionally do, is to put me at the center of the experience, and how checking in, like, how am I doing, and for me, it's day to day, like, how am I doing today? How am I feeling? What are my strategies? If I need help, what's in my toolkit? If and when I do need help, that for me is very reassuring. A couple other things that I have done. One is I'm definitely not trying to go all, turbo with, shifting my approach and going all virtual and like coming up with all this content. I'm definitely like dialing that down and just, again, sort of being easy on myself. I'm really trying to like not compare social media. Like, that has also been very helpful for me, just to chill with that, so those are a couple other things that have helped to keep me at the center of this experience, just slowing down, breathing, chilling, knowing that this is going to be something that is going to be okay on the other end, but in the present moment, I'm at the center of this.
Looks like Colin may want to chime in with another question.
Yeah, something that came to mind. I guess curious of what you guys think, how companies will see how we've used this time. Like, will they want to hear that we used it in a productive way, or will they kind of write it off as like, oh, you were at home. We're not worried about what you did during this time.
Yeah, Colin, I think it's going to be really individualized. So I think the story, as long as it is you and how you dealt with this or got through this, I think is the important piece. So I'm not seeing a lot of, first of all, I'm not seeing a lot of question around this time besides the question of how are you doing? Like that's sort of the general question that people have. I don't think that people, again, hiring people are going to be critical of this time in general. That's my assumption. If you want to take classes and get certified and stuff or volunteer or whatever, I think that is great. I think that can be part of your story around this time. If you are using this to chill and get some break from school and just to sit on the couch and watch ESPN like I'm doing, and sounds like Jake's doing too, that's also, I think, fine, as long Colin, as you're owning that story. So I would not be worried or feeling the pressure to try to be productive here during this time. That might be part of your eventual time, but I think don't beat yourself up if that's not part of your experience. I don't think that companies are gonna like be critical.
Yeah.
Colin, I just shared a link for a resource that CES put together for the summer that turned upside down. Just some suggestions of broadly some ideas around ways to be productive if that is something that you would like to do. I want to echo Tom's insights. I think something that I've seen in my network a lot is kind of an exhaustion from seeing the tweets or social media posts about 10 ways to be productive, or if you're not using this time to be productive, then you're falling behind. Don't worry about that. There are a lot of us that are navigating, people in my position that are navigating like being parents and doing our job at the same time and just feeling like, let's just get through it. So everybody's kind of going through their own things. And I'll add that I've been working in career centers going back to 2010, and there's really like a 3 or 4 year window from 2008 till about 12 or 13 even, where employers just kind of stopped really asking questions about like gaps in employment or what were you doing and why. And I think that the Great Recession really set the stage for people to be even more understanding and forgiving in this job market, because unfortunately that was very recent. So we're all still remembering what that was like. So I want to echo what Tom was saying. I know that that Puget Sound students really like to be productive and fill their time, and it's probably feeling like, all right, graduation just happened, so what should I be doing? So do something if it's something that's going to be helpful for you and feel good. But I think I agree with Tom. Don't feel too much pressure to fill that time so that there's no gap on a resume or something like that.
I echo that, Jake. I don't see a lot of concern from employers around any sort of gap anymore. I think, again, as long as you are confident in your story around that time, and if that includes, some learning or stuff you did, that's great. If not, that's also great. As long as you are good with that story, I find that's something that is not a big problem.
Thanks, guys.
You're welcome. And we're going to wrap up the kind of formal part of our conversation now, and we've got a few minutes before Tom has to head off to another engagement. But I want to take a second to thank you again, Tom, for joining us. Thanks for being a resource for CES as an alum. We really appreciate the expertise you've been able to provide today and in other instances. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And also want to just let people know who are here or who are watching our recording that CES is available to students and alumni even after you graduate. So make an appointment with me or another career advisor on Handshake. And Tom, I want to give you a second to also let people know that you're available. So go ahead, let them know.
Yeah, there is opportunity to talk with me directly for free during the month of May, and probably moving into June as well, depending on how things progress here in the Seattle area. There is a link that Jake can provide to folks who are in attendance today. For those of you who are watching on the YouTube channel or other medias, you can go to calendly.com/engaged pursuit. Again, that's calendly.com/engaged pursuit to sign up for 30 minutes with me. And again, it's totally free, it's totally confidential. We can talk about your resume, we can talk about LinkedIn, we can talk about your plan, we can talk about networking, we can just talk. And I am trying to be available for everybody who might need some help during this crazy time as well. So please, if you want, or you know of other people in your network who could use just some advice, don't hit me up for sure.
All right. Thanks a lot, Tom. Yeah, we'll end the program here. But for those that are in attendance, feel free to hang out and chat for a couple of minutes before Tom heads off to his next engagement.
All right, guys. Thanks again.